Hello, welcome to ENG 250, Part 2, Week 2. Let's talk about Chekhov's Lady with the Little Dog. It is the story of a man and a woman in 19th century Russia who meet at a tourist resort, the city of Yalta, or the town of Yalta, on the Black Sea. Both are already married. Anna to an older man she feels no romantic love for, and Dmitri to a woman he despises, perhaps because she is his intellectual superior. I will run through the plot quickly, then identify some aspects of the story for discussion. In the opening scene of a holiday resort, there are people strolling around in no particular hurry and partaking in a kind of harmless gossip about new arrivals. We note that Dmitry Dmitrich Gurov already thinks it is a bad idea to pursue this young woman, strangely enough, because she is there without her husband. We learn too of Dmitry's contradictory attitude to women. We also learn that Dmitry has made a habit of being unfaithful to his wife. The process of introduction, seduction, and temporary relationship takes place against the backdrop of the tourist resort. Later, Anna is full of self-loathing at what she has done, while Dmitry is confident that this is just another love affair. The flow of the first part of the story is interrupted by the end of the holiday and is marked by Anna's return to S, her city is never named, and Dmitry's return to Moscow. In Moscow, there begins another process. Here, Dmitry undergoes a change, shifting from the frivolous holiday-goer and seducer to a man reflective about his life, discontent with his cultural and personal surroundings. Indeed, he changes from being a man who takes only well-calculated risks to a man who seems quite reckless. The subsequent journey to S, Dmitry's subsequent journey to S, and the fact that he walks up and down Anna's street in full view of the public suggests the degree to which Dmitry has abandoned his highly developed sense of self-respect. In travelling to S, he exposes himself terribly. The encounter at the opera with Anna must be the climax of the story. It is intense. Both individuals are in highly nervous states. They could be caught at any moment. They come so close to social and personal disaster. Everything is at stake. But then note how the author exits the climax and moves to the resolution. Nothing is announced. The action simply and suddenly shifts back to Moscow, with Dmitry walking in the street on his way to meet Anna. The story ends on a note of irresolution rather than resolution. What I mean by that is, even though Anna and Dmitry have decided to meet in a Moscow hotel every so often, nothing of their future is certain. Indeed, everything about their future is temporary and uncertain. I'd like now to turn to Dmitry, just to open up the scope of his character and the contradictions that structure his character. Oh, by the way, in the analysis I want you to do for this week, let me just stress again, it's not enough simply to go through, as I have done, from event to event that structure the plot. You need to say how it is that one event leads to another event, how it is that the totality of these events leads to the climax and the resolution. Dmitry. So I'll talk now about 3 episodes in the story, 3 episodes of note, 3 episodes where the story shifts from a descriptive narrative mode to a philosophically reflective and indeed poetically lyrical mode. The first is on page 167, the second is on page 270, and the third is on page 272. All these page numbers refer to the Chekhov story in the Anne Charters textbook. The first passage on page 167 involves a description of the landscape as Anna and Dmitri take an after-dinner walk, the first night of their meeting. Quote, "They strolled and talked of how strange the light was on the sea. The water was of a lilac colour, so soft and warm, and over it the moon cast a golden strip." Unquote. Chekhov is famous for the economy of his style. It is not necessary to describe an object directly, he says. For example, instead of describing a shiny glass object placed somewhere on a table, the writer should simply describe the light that is reflected on and by the object. So here, the writer doesn't describe what the characters are feeling. He doesn't say, Dmitri felt or suspected this, Anna felt or suspected this. Rather, the narrative shifts, as I said earlier, to this poetically lyrical form, and in so doing somehow indicates the inner being of the characters, an inner being that perhaps the characters themselves are not aware of. The strange light, the lilac-coloured sea, the soft warmth, and the luminosity of the moon. In these images, the two characters are brought together in the play of atmospherics, even before they themselves decide that there is anything to unify them. That is, they are brought together symbolically. And of course, the psychological quality of this coming together is one of melancholy. That is, a heightened sense of emotions that forces a reflection on life outside, as it might be lived, outside the conventions of society, or as it exists outside the conventions of society. The couple, as the story unfolds, must find a way to live outside these conventions in a society where such a life is in fact not possible. Herein lies the tragedy. The simultaneous sympathy for or identification with the characters in their desires and the withdrawal from them as their desire threatens to destroy their lives. Moreover, elevating the encounter of these two people to the level of the melancholy forces of nature suggests a necessity to their actions, a compulsion that neither of them can control. Now, let's go to the second of these passages. It describes a similar set of atmospherics to those just discussed. Two lovers are alone in the world, under the sky and in the face of nature. In a way, this is a moment of realization, of catharsis. Human beings, normally full of great thoughts and imaginings and self-importance, are here nothing in the face of nature, nothing in the cycle of life and death. Dmitri's thought is philosophical, even theological. His thought is that in the dulling of human self-importance, in the face of nature's strict laws, in the face of nature's constancy, in the face of nature's indifference to human life, contains what Dmitri sees as real human salvation. So human salvation is the real, for Dmitri, is the realization that we are nothing and nature goes on. Of course, that raises a moral question, or a question of morality. If we are nothing, then everything is possible. Dmitri doesn't follow that conclusion, but indeed, neither does Chekhov follow that conclusion. Pursue that conclusion. But certainly in Russian literature to come, especially the writer Fyodor Dostoevsky, this question is explored. Now, let's follow Dmitri to Moscow once the holiday and romance come to an end. Okay? This is page 271 and 272. He's out with his friends. He's having a nice life. He's going to dinner at the club with his male friends. Full of energy, back in his city, Dmitri immerses himself in social life. Socially, he could be considered a successful man, but it doesn't work. The expected disappearance of the woman from his mind does not happen. He has nobody to talk to on this subject. He tries to speak to one of his male friends, but the only reply he gets is, quote, "You were right. The sturgeon was a bit off," unquote. This is a totally absurd answer, but also it's highly significant. Oh, by the way, this short quote is page 272. Such a reply mocks Dmitri for his growing infatuation with Anna. It is as if the speaker declares that there is something a bit off about Dmitri's life and his attitude to love. A bit off, if something's off, it's rotten. It doesn't, it's gone bad with age. Dmitri is abandoning his world and he is being abandoned by it. His narrative, the story that held his life together, held him in place socially and psychologically, is unravelling. Moreover, it is inevitable. There seems nothing Dmitri can do about his feelings. It becomes absolutely necessary that Dmitri act as he does. It's beyond his control, as they say. Love in a grey hotel room, until that love ceases to exist, perhaps through exhaustion and emptiness, is a fate that cannot be evaded. Hence the tragedy. Note the word fate. In its literary sense, hence the tragedy in its literary sense. In tragedy, the individual not only cannot avoid future tragedy, everything they do to avoid it, in fact, brings that tragedy closer. In literary tragedy, we, the readers, with our distance from the events, can see where events are leading. We see that no good will come of this. By contrast, the characters in the story do not have our, that is the reader's, distance, and so stumble unwittingly to their fate. And we watch, horrified, but often sympathetic. This is the basis of the emotion of much literature, especially literature that's based on this tragic model. It is the machine that produces catharsis. And you might recall from the Carney lecture that catharsis is precisely this emotion, any emotion that is bound up with literature in many cultures. The literature that does not only tell a story, it does not only tell a moral fable, it introduces a complex set of emotions and looks on as individual human beings fall victim to those contradictions and ultimately fall victim to their fate. Thank you, and I'm going to go on now to part 3 of ENG 250, week 2.